Thinking about self-publishing and don't know where to start? Join the Spa Girls each week for 30 minutes of honest advice, tips, and resources. I'm Trudy J, and I am here with Cheryl Phipps.
Hi there.
And none of the other Spa Girls are here with us today, but instead of the Spa Girls, we have a superstar of publishing, the one, the only Dave Chesson. Yay!
Yay! Welcome, Dave.
Thank you, guys. I probably scared off the other two.
Yeah,
no, it's been a full-on year, month, whatever for the Spa Girls and our personal lives, and hopefully things are coming to a head in the next couple of weeks with parents and children and house selling and moving, and oh my goodness, it's, you name it, we're doing it.
Anyway, but we're super excited. I'm excited enough for all the Spa Girls to have you here talking with us today. So what I'm going to start with is read out a quick bio. I've cobbled it together from various places, so hopefully none of it is complete lies about you.
We don't tell lies.
We don't tell lies. And then we'll just get straight into the interview because I'm super excited to pick your brains. So Dave Chesson is a former Navy engineer and a super passionate online marketing and SEO geek. He is also the creator of Kindlepreneur.com, a blog and website which specializes in demystifying Kindle ebook marketing for authors. And because it couldn't just stop there, he's also the creator of the even more helpful Publisher Rocket, a program that helps authors do market research as well as figure out their keywords and categories. And you've also written books yourself, and he does coaching with other authors, which we'll talk about in a minute. So welcome. Thank you so much for joining us here. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, thanks for having me.
That's awesome. Can you tell us a little bit of how you got into publishing and what made you start the Kindlepreneur website?
Sure. Well, when I was a kid, I never thought I'd ever be a writer. I actually have dyslexia. And so when you grow up with something like that, you just think you're not meant for it. But it doesn't mean that your desire to be able to write just goes away. So fast forward through my life, I joined the Navy. I became a nuclear engineer, as far away from English as possible. But the military kept sending me and deploying me to places without my family. And so we had a talk where my wife and I were like, hey, what's your goal? What's the purpose that you're really doing all this for? Is it to be an admiral? I'm like, no. She's like, well, then what? And I'm like, I don't know. So we started looking at how I could transition out of the military, aka out of a full-time, traveling job without my family, into something that would at least have me home with my kids. So my absolute goal from the get-go was to be home with my kids. Now, how does somebody, and this time I was actually stationed in Korea, how does somebody in Korea be able to build something to allow them an exit plan out of their, 9-to-5 job? Well, you could do a whole bunch of things online, but when you're on the other side of the world, people are going to ask you questions or need things from you, while you're sleeping. And that might not be a good case. Or I was also going out to sea a lot still. I was serving on Korean warships at the time, which is crazy because I don't speak Korean. I actually speak English and Chinese, and that's it. So that was tough. But I couldn't just create a business and be gone for a month, so that's when I started realizing a lot about Kindle Direct Publishing, where this was an opportunity for, to be able to write, create books, and then Amazon handles everything for you. You submit it to them, they make the sales, they take care of the shipping, the packaging. You don't have to do customer support, which is huge. So I was like, wow, this seems awesome. But there's a problem. I have dyslexia. I'm not a good writer. Does this mean that, I should be that guy that floods Amazon with really bad books? No. But there is a very important lesson, especially for someone like me, where I'm really just trying to get started and learn. And what that was, when people have a question, when they have something they really want and they can't find it, and you're the person who knows it, or you have that answer for them, you don't have to be the greatest writer. You don't have to be the greatest orator. You don't have to be the greatest, anything. So long as you got the answer, you're the greatest person to that person. Yeah. And so I started to approach Amazon a little bit differently. Instead of just writing anything that came to my head and hoping that I could produce, Ernest Hemingway level writing, somehow become a master marketer, I started to approach Amazon and say, hey, all right, Amazon, let me look at you and let me find out what it is that people are going to Amazon for and not finding the books they want, not finding the information that they really desire. And if that's something that I can truly serve, then let me do that. And so when I had a subject, thanks to the research on Amazon, that I knew that there was a hungry market for, I just needed to do a good job. Now that I can do. I can do research. I can hone that craft, knowing that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. I can do that. So I really got into that. And then I really started studying Amazon, like studying, why does Amazon choose to show that book over this one? Why isn't my book at the top of search results? What's going on with categories? And why is it that I'm selling more than this dude, but he's the best seller? And so when I really started to approach Amazon from kind of an analytical mind and kind of experimenting with them, I realized that nobody was really writing about this. And so that's what triggered me to create Kindlepreneur.com, is to answer those questions, that, to give the how-tos, to teach people about these things. And to this day, I'm still experimenting with Amazon so that I can have because let's face it, Amazon doesn't tell you everything. They don't come out and say, well, this is exactly how you do it. No, they don't.
No.
So
no, they do not.
no, they don't. So instead of theorizing and being, well, I guess, or think, like, I'll set up to have like 1,000 data points to be able to come back and say, look, the data shows us that when you do this, this is what happens. But when you do that, that is what happens. And so that's really been the core of everything I've been doing at Kindlepreneur. And that's really what's led me to here. And I'll tell you this, I am so thankful for KDP because it has afforded me the ability. I left the military, and just off of my book sales, even today, I can afford my house, all my kids, sending my kids to a private school, and they're about to come home from school here in 30 minutes. I hope that they don't come bum rushing through my office like they've done before in a podcast interview.
That's fine.
But I'm not going to lie. There's a lot of I'm just really jazzed about that I get to be home, or that I can be there to pick them up. I love it when they have their little, Christmas concert coming up, and I'm and it's during workday, and I'm the only dad there. I'm like,
Yeah.
I mean, that's a bummer for the other kids, but not my kids.
No, your kids are like, yay, yay us.
So I'm very blessed in that respect. I'm very happy. And I've got a lot of great things to say about what KDP has done. They can be infuriating sometimes, but they've given us an opportunity, someone like me, to be able to create something and to build the life that I was looking for.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I want to say here, because we were talking about it before, that clearly what you're doing well, you're doing right, because Amazon love you, don't they? They're talking you up. And I think that's a testament to, they don't do it for everybody. They don't love everybody. So well done.
Yeah, it was a real big surprise. They've been quoted twice talking about my content, even telling people to come to Kindlepreneur to learn how to optimize their books for more sales. There's even talks about our discussion on their international sales markets. And so, yeah, it's been really cool. And what's funny is I don't have contact with them. Like I don't really talk with KDP, but I'm glad they're noticing the work.
Yeah.
And that's interesting, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so that's awesome. So you've created this environment where you can use the research that you've done to sell your books. So can we dig in a little bit to some of the research that we can do as authors to kind of help us along the way? Like, let's get into the meat of it. And so there's categories and keywords are the two kind of main things that we're going to talk about here today. So could you give me or give us the what is a keyword? What is a keyword, starting with, we'll start with keywords. I'm going to forget about categories for a minute, if that's all right, unless you're going to tell me that they're intrinsically linked and I should never separate them, which is possible, and just explain what a keyword is and why it's so important to us as authors on KDP, on Amazon.
Yeah, well, keywords are really the words your target market would type into the Amazon search bar. That's what it is. It's the words that the shopper is thinking of when they're trying to think of their next book. We as authors take those phrases, and that's the words that we put into KDP when we're publishing our books. So in essence, they're the same thing, but sometimes we think of them as two different things. So what do I mean by publishing? Well, when you go in your KDP dashboard, okay, and you're publishing your book on Amazon, Amazon's going to ask you for what to enter in your Kindle keywords, your keywords for your book. They're going to give you 7 different boxes. Okay. Inside each of those boxes, you can put as many words or phrases as you want until you reach 50 characters in each box. Okay. And 50 characters, a character is a letter, space, symbol. It's like 50 of that. Right. So for most authors, they think of keywords as in, what words would I put into my 7 Kindle keyword boxes that helps Amazon to show my book. But the healthiest way to think of the word keyword is what I first said, which is these are the words your shopper would use to try to find your book. And when you think of it that way, it's not a gamification. It's not about hacking Amazon or any of that. It's about aligning your book with who your target market is and helping them to discover your book better. Now, in order to create the right keywords, okay, we as authors actually need 3 things to do this correctly. The first thing is we need to understand what words shoppers actually type into Amazon. It's great if you describe your book in one way, but if nobody describes it in that way, then that keyword's not going to help your book discovered. You're basically sending it to a dead end, okay, where no one will ever be there. So we need to know that the phrase is something people actually type in. The second thing we need to know is that it's a phrase that people will actually buy books for. Case in point. Say, well, there are a lot of people on Amazon that type in the word fantasy. Okay. But what are the chances that Amazon shows the perfect fantasy book right there? Like slim to none. As a matter of fact, if you think through your previous Amazon book shopping experiences, or anytime you've gone to Amazon to shop for a product, we start with a very broad topic, something like fantasy. Then we look and we're like, oh no, that's not what we're looking for. I mean, we could even go to like coats. You put in like winter jacket and you're like, oh no. Okay. Men's winter jacket. Okay. No. Men's winter jacket. And then we add leather. Okay. Leather biker. Like, and we just keep adding words and phrases until we finally, like, it helps us to process what we're looking for. And then we find the kind of product we're looking for. Same thing happens with books. We start with fantasy and we're like, nope. Then we're like, epic war. And most of the time, by the way, people won't delete. They just keep adding phrases to try to cull down. So you'll see these long terms, right? And then they'll be like, all right, they'll add in the word dragon because that's really what they're going for. They're thinking Lord of the Rings, but it's not coming to them, you know? And then they'll put in elves. And by the finally, when they have this long phrase, they'll finally see the kind of books they're looking for. And then they'll purchase. But notice that all of those were different searches. So it's very important that when we're doing research, just to recap, we want phrases that people actually type in, but we also want to verify that these are phrases that people will end up buying books for. Okay. And then finally, the third thing is we don't want to go after a phrase where it's going to be impossible for us to show up. Okay. If you're looking at this phrase, okay, say it's a phrase people are typing. Yes, books are being bought, but then you realize it's Stephen King. Like, good luck beating that one, you know? So we don't want to have keyword phrases that are just too competitive. So to recap, they got to be phrases that people type into Amazon. They've got to be phrases that people buy on Amazon. And then we don't want it to be so competitive that we can't show up and be at the top for searchers.
Do they have to be exact? Like, so if you put in epic war fantasy and someone is, so that's one of your keywords, and someone puts in fantasy war epic or something, like, do you still get those, or does it have to be the exact phrase that you're using?
So about 6 months ago, we did an experiment to try to figure out if Amazon, when you put in your phrases or words into those 7 Kindle keyword boxes, does Amazon, you know, use the different versions of the words inside the boxes? Do I need to pluralize? Does that affect it, et cetera? And whole blown experiment written out on it. You find it if you go to Google and you just Google 7 Kindle keywords, just that, you'll find it. But the answer is yes, Amazon does all the variations of the words inside the box. The book will index and show up for the variations. So if you put epic war fantasy, then it will also show up for fantasy war epic. Dyslexia is kicking in. So I'm like,
all the versions.
All of those ones.
I don't have dyslexia and I couldn't do that.
Exactly. It will flip all the words around and do all the variations, so long as it's something that they will actually show books for. That's one of the things we found. If it's a phrase that you type in Amazon and it doesn't show any products, they're not going to show just your book because now you're there. So it's so long as they acknowledge it should be a search result. Also, pluralization, they account for that as well. So if you put in a phrase, know that all variations of pluralizations will be accounted for.
Awesome.
So a good idea would be to actually, if you think you've got a good phrase, is to type that into Amazon and see what comes up to make sure that you're targeting.
So here's the steps on what an author can do to learn those 3 things. The first thing, let's talk about how do you learn what people type into Amazon? Well, that's where you go to Amazon and you start typing in phrases. And what happens is that Amazon has this thing called auto suggest. And auto suggest is where Amazon.com uses their previous shopping history of other people to try to guess at what you're going to try to type in. So those suggestions are a list of some keywords that are out there that people have typed in the past. You may type in your idea and find out there's even more descriptive phrases or words that show up. So that's one way you can manually do this. The second is talk about, well, do people buy books for it? One way to do this is that when you press enter on Amazon, okay, so now, you typed in the keyword, yep, okay, this is something somebody's typed in, you press enter, now it displays all the books that show up for it. If you go to the first 3, maybe 4 books, you can click on the books and then go to their Amazon bestseller rank of that book. And the Amazon bestseller rank is a rank from 1 being the most bought book in all of Amazon at this point to 7.5 million or something like that, which is the worst bought book. It's never been bought, never been seen for a long time. And that range is an indicator of how successful or popular the book is on Amazon. Now, we went a step further. There's a free calculator that we have. If you just type in Kindle calculator into Google, it should show up. But the Kindle calculator, you can put in the Amazon bestseller rank and click enter, and it will convert it to tell you how many books that day were sold. Mm-hmm. So now you can actually look and see, okay, well, these books that are showing up for this keyword have sold this many copies. I would say stay away from the keyword, especially if you put that in there and it's like 0 or 1 sold and all of them are just 1, then you know that this keyword's probably not benefiting this book. There are a lot of indicators that can go, but this is a very quick thing for authors to do. If you don't want to get really technical, another thing that should be a part of it is the book new? Amazon does give preferential treatment to new books. Also, too, if it's a new book, the person's probably doing a whole bunch of promotions, which means sales may be up, but it's only because they're really, rolling up the sleeves and doing a whole bunch of things. But like if the books have been around for a while and they're making sales, then that's a good, strong indicator of natural Amazon shoppers finding them and purchasing them. Okay. So like I said, quick one is click on the books that show up for it and check their ABSR, put it through the calculator and find out if there are actual sales. Then the third thing is competition. Now, once you know that these books are making sales, this is where you're going to have to subjectively look at them and ask yourself, can I beat them? Okay. If it's all right, look at the authors. Are the authors famous? Do the authors have like websites and email lists? Sometimes in their bio, they'll say that I run this blah, 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 or, I'm a New York Times editor. Okay. They probably got a following and, got it, look at their covers. Are the covers amazing? Or one of my favorite indicators is when I look at the book and I'm like, that's a horrible cover and that's a bad book description and holy moly, it's making sales. Like that's a great thing to find because now you know that all I have to do is, and this sounds superficial, but let's talk, this is marketing here.
Yes.
Is that if I have a better cover and a much better book description, I will make more sales. And if I get to continue making sales, it's because of my good writing. See what I'm saying? Like you could be a great writer, an amazing writer, but if your book cover looks like, looks bad and your book description is not very invigorating, and you're making sales, you're actually losing out on a lot of potential sales because of those things. And the fact that you have some success is because you've really done a great job with that limiting resource. It's like, to me at that point, you're running a marathon with a broken leg. And somehow you ran that marathon. I'm like, dang, wow, that's amazing. You do know your time could have been so much better without that broken leg. Okay, that's to me is what a bad book cover and bad book description does for all of it.
That's an awesome way to describe it. I love that. Yeah.
Writing a book is like a marathon. So I always think of it like that. And then it's like when you're hindered, I'm just like, that's it right there. It's
why would you do that to yourself?
Right. So those are the 3 ways that you can try to create much better keywords. Now, one of the things that drove me to create Publisher Rocket was that all of those things can be pretty time consuming. As a matter of fact, you could spend a lot of time going through and trying to pull those keyword phrases and suggestions. Then on top of that, if you imagine hitting enter and then clicking on books and then putting them through a calculator and then tracking all that on an Excel sheet. And then also deleting the ones that, nope, bad sales, or deleting the ones where you did your subjective look and you're like, that doesn't look good. that can really spend a lot of time on authors. And when I first started Kindlepreneur, we had all these spreadsheets, and when you say spreadsheets to authors, usually that's like, yeah, that's
eyes glazing over.
Twitch.
Yeah, Twitch. I'm going to go back to writing,
Yeah.
And so that was the big part that's when I decided to create Publisher Rocket. I wanted something that efficiently and effectively did all of that was able to account for more things than the average author could, or that, somebody who isn't like, a math geek could kind of do. And it's all compiled into a very easy thing. I actually tested it. I call it the Muzzy test. My grandmother, I call her my Muzzy. And I was like, all right, if my Muzzy can use this thing, and she thinks it's cool, then we did it. And we kept sending it to her. And finally we got the Muzzy thumb of approval.
Wow. That's awesome.
So that was the goal we did. And for it will not only tell you what words people type into Amazon, it will also tell you the estimated number of people that actually type that into Amazon, which is something you can't come out with on your own. And finally, it gives a competition score of 1 to 100, with 1 being super easy and 100 being don't touch it unless you're Stephen King. And just like that, authors can quickly get the information they need to select the right keywords.
Okay. So as an author, we're looking for ones, or are we looking for 1 to 10 or 1 to 20?
So the way that I break it out, and we have tutorials on it kind of showing everybody like what to do and what the breakout is that I say if it's 35 or less, then anybody can go for it. And if it's 36 to 65, you're going to have to roll up your sleeves and really want it. And if it's 66 to 100, you should have a really good following and a great marketing strategy, as well as really wanting it. That's kind of the best way to put it. And what do I mean by wanting it? Well, the key thing is that, look, if there's a bunch of books that have that keyword in their title or subtitle, and you're not going to do that, then do understand that you're probably not going to benefit from it, right? If it's greater than 36. If this person is super, like all the books that show up for it are super powerful, right? You're going to need to prove to Amazon that your book truly deserves to be, like, you're really going to have to market that. You're really going to have to be able to be a super powerful book to be with them. That's kind of our varying ways. So like I said, 1 to 35 means, put it in there. You're going to benefit from it. 36 to 65, you're going to have to work for it a bit. You're going to have to angle it, maybe putting in your title or subtitle, do some marketing, like some really good marketing, and then you're going to benefit from it. And then beyond that, you got to be on top of your game. Like you got to be, I'm a very popular writer. I've got my, my art team and my email list and my, beta readers and my street team, and all forces go, and we will take that ground and we will benefit from it. Best way to put it.
Awesome. That's great. That's great.
Sorry, the military came out of me.
No, I was there.
I just want to speak from experience. Like I was one of those people who was plugging away in front of the TV at night, filling out the spreadsheets, and then I got the old version, but there's of Publisher Rocket, and it's changed. There's a game changer. Like you what used to take hours takes like minutes to find the same information. It's fantastic.
Yeah, and we've always been adding to it since it came out. Matter of fact, like you said, the original name was actually KDP Rocket, and we decided to change the name because back in the day, KDP, I mean, this is when we first started, KDP was only for Kindle, right? Because CreateSpace was for books. So we started off as only an ebook software, and then it became book and ebook. So we added book and ebook inside of it. So you can do specific searches for book and for ebook. And then on top of that too, we've started working with Barnes & Noble and Kobo and iTunes to be able to tap into their markets to also pull in data so that authors can make decisions on those external markets as well. And Barnes & Noble put it pretty good when they're like, we like you guys, we want to work with you, but I can't talk to you with your name being KDP.
Right.
I was like,
it kind of makes sense. Yeah.
I can't blame you on that one. That sounds pretty good. So we changed it to Publisher Rocket so as to improve our conversations with them. But we hope to add their markets in the coming days, months, years. It depends. I think we'll see Kobo sooner than Barnes & Noble because, hopefully Barnes & Noble isn't listening, but their bureaucracy is so bad.
Yeah.
I mean, they're
Kobo
tripping
are
over
willing
themselves.
to listen, aren't they? Yeah.
Kobo's pretty cool. Like
we like Kobo. Yeah.
Yeah, they're agile. They have energy. They're going to do things. They've got a great backing behind them. I just wish Barnes and Noble wasn't such a giant monster. And, you know, they got bought out by a company, 6 months ago, a year ago or so. I think a company in Asia or in Europe bought them. And so now they're doing this giant transition. It's
not the right time.
No. Scary time.
Yeah.
So if we're wanting to figure out the right keywords for our book, and we want to go to publish a rocket and figure out what those are, and using your 3, you know, like how to, you know, what the phrases are that people are searching for, how do we do it? Do we go and just click on the button that says search for keywords and go from there, or what's the best?
Yeah. So on our tutorial page, there's a link to an article. And by the way, you'll see the tutorials on how to use the tool on the left. And then on the right, there's important articles or guides to the right. And think of like the left being the video showing you how to do something, how to use the functionality of the program. And then to the right is here's all the steps that you should be using to get the most out of it. To the right, there's an article that's called, and this is broken down because it's important, because keywords are different depending on fiction and nonfiction. There's one called how to do nonfiction keywords, and then there's another one, how to do fiction keywords. And I'm assuming you guys are fiction.
Yes. Oh, we have one nonfiction for the Spa Girls. But
I was going to say, I thought there was a nonfiction in there. So in fiction, right? Remember, the definition of a keyword is the words your target market uses, your shopper, your reader uses when they're searching for their next book. The words that come to a nonfiction reader and a fiction reader are completely different. In nonfiction, it's about a solution, a problem, a demographic, and all variations of that. So what I mean by this is that, say, I want to make money. Okay. Maybe the problem is I lost my job. You know, darn you, COVID. Maybe the demographic is I'm a single mom, right? Imagine a book that's called Lost Your Job, Make Money Online for Single Mothers. Boy, with that, I mean, and now if you knew that those were the phrases that people were describing their problem, that they were looking for a solution, and you also knew their demographic as well, any single mom who just lost their job that is looking for how to make money online is probably going to jump on that book because that's speaking their language, right? That is the power of keywords in that. Now you could say not demographics. That sounds very niche and that sounds very marketing, but like, here's another one. Back in the day, this was almost a book I wrote and then I never got around to it, but this came from my research. Was there was a time when people were using Evernote like crazy. Okay. Evernote is a software that allows you to organize your notes. I actually still use Evernote to organize my ideas. When I write nonfiction, I use this tactic that can be maybe another podcast if you ever have me on, but I call it the John C. Maxwell tactic, or the Maxwell sandwich. And I'm always looking for stories to kind of be able to put inside of each one of the chapters in my nonfictions, because stories sell, period. Me telling you a story about myself and weaving in how you learn, or me telling you a history, some really cool story in history, and weaving in the learning pattern will actually make it much better, enjoyable discussion than me just saying, the way you do this is you put this here and you do that there. You know? But anyways, going back to our component is that everybody was writing books on Evernote. Okay. I mean, because it was hot. There were so many people wanting to buy books on Evernote. And this is, I think, a couple of years ago. If I wrote a book on Evernote, I would have to be the best. I would either have to be the best writer, clearly the best book out of all these other writers, or I would have to be the best marketer of all the writers. Now, at that time, I was neither, so there obviously was not going to happen. So I did my research. And instead of that, I also added demographics to the keyword phrase, right? Instead of just looking Evernote and all the other Evernote keywords that everybody was trying to do, I asked, okay, are there types of people looking for Evernote? Like Evernote for writers, Evernote for lawyers, Evernote for project managers, Evernote for. The key is that each one of those books would be the same, except you write it for a specific market. You think, why would a writer care about this component? Why would a lawyer care about this functionality? And so I did my research and I found out that there really were lawyers, project managers, teachers, students, and authors adding in those words at the end of Evernote to see if there was an Evernote just for them.
Wow.
Now, would I make more money being number one for the term Evernote? Yes, but I'd also have to be the best marketer of all the other 150 other books out there in order to get there. But here's the deal. Do I have to be the best marketer or writer when I'm the only book that serves that existing market?
Yeah.
No, I don't. I'm probably going to get the sale. Hopefully I'm a good enough writer to truly deliver on what I'm offering to these people, because that's very important. But I tell you this though, I will get steady sales for months, if not years, because I'm the only book that truly represents an existing market on Amazon that has no other choice. Okay.
But
or
also you
there's
have
another
multiple
option out there, but I'm the much better option. You know, like somebody wrote that book and they're making sales, but that book cover looks like they used, you know, word clip art. Come on, you know.
But you're not talking about just one book. You're making the same content work again and again and again. So you could potentially, you know, you'd be earning way more because you could do it like that
Exactly. And now I know. So one of the any nonfiction listeners out there, I'm going to tell you, demographics is a really powerful, awesome tactic that you should absolutely consider if you're writing a nonfiction book. You could either try to be the same book as everybody else, or you can maybe speak to a specific demographic out there, a specific market. And now you're the only book that speaks to them. Key is just do your research and make sure that people really are typing that in. And if you know that, and you're the only book in town, you're going to have a good launch there. That'll work well for you. All right. So that's nonfiction. With regards to fiction, people do not type in pain points, problems, solutions, or demographics like nonfiction. We don't do that.
Nope.
We're trying to describe the story we want. That's what happens. So there are different categories that I tell authors to really think about when trying to think of their fiction keywords. And by the way, for either of these, how you work this with Rocket is I like to start with a sheet of paper and I break it into the categories. So like we talked about with nonfiction, I'll put, you know, pain point, pain point or problem, right? Solution. I also put in demographics. And then there's another column that I use for sensationalization, which there's actually a better word for it, but that's my like fun word for it. But it's like, for example, lose weight fast, right? The word fast is a how to sensationalize the hook, right? You know, lose weight before summer, right? Because there's a point. And there's a whole list of lots of different ones, but just thinking of those as well as another component. All right, so let's go to the list on fiction. The first is time periods and settings. Okay. Imagine if I say this is an 1800s book, Victorian era, medieval, right? That changes. That's a really big component to the type of story. Okay. If I say Caribbean, maybe I didn't tell you the time period, but if I say Caribbean, there's only two real Caribbean style of books we're thinking of, right? Pirates or some kind of like, you know, Caribbean getaway or something. But notice that these words just immediately start. If I say Western, we're probably thinking cowboys, right? If I say prairie, I mean, the prairie still exists, but we all know what time period I'm probably talking about, right? So time periods and settings bring a lot with them. The next thing is the main character, right? What's special about them? Okay. Is it, how do you describe the main character in that? Is it a single mother? Is it, you know, a lichen or a werewolf or, you know, is it a vampire? Is it an alpha male?
I was just going to say that very one.
Yeah, right. I mean, but you notice, like, how do you describe the protagonist? What is their special gift? What makes them unique to the story? You know, there's a lot of different ways, but that really adds to how people describe the kind of book they're looking for. Single mother. The next one is what I call the sub-genre. And there are different ways of describing these, but these are very key. The sub-genre is what flavor or of genre are you in? So say, for example, you're in romance. Okay. What kind of romance? Because there's like hundreds of different shades of romance here, not to borrow from that book. But I mean, you can go from the spectrum of wholesome Christian, okay, to, you know, you could just go wholesome, because let's face it, wholesome Christian and wholesome are not always the same thing. It's a different flavor, right? Then you can go into hot and steamy. You can go into erotica, bondage, like, and let's face it, a wholesome Christian would not want to read a bondage one or something,
No.
or erotica
No.
or any of that.
No.
They're going to put in some classifier in their keyword to make sure that they don't get that kind of thing. So shoppers will try to detail what kind. If it's a mystery, a murder mystery, is it gruesome? Like, there are other words that help them to know what kind of murder mystery. Are we talking about dark murder mystery and all the different ways of saying that? Are we talking about light and, fluffy? Is the author going to describe the details of the murder and the sinews and the blood and all that? Or is it just, we think she fell and died. Wait, do you think she what? Aren't you the detective?
Yeah.
Yes, I am. I slept in a Holiday Inn too, but like, again, like, there's a way to describe that comedy or what style of comedy, dark humor. Like, you see, how do we break down? And that's why I call it the sub genre. What words help me to really know what kind of romance it is?
Would you call them
what
like
kind of murder mystery it is, etc.?
We kind of call them sort of tropes. I don't know if that's just a romance thing.
Tropes, yeah,
kind of, or is it not really? Like,
it is. It is, but sometimes these things really need, like, a trope can be this, but it may need a quantifier before it.
Yeah.
Like, you could say, well, I'm in this trope, but there's shades of that as well.
Yeah.
I'm trying to drive the author to feel like what kind of shades they need to act to it, or add
like a second chance romance that's a wholesome read,
yes,
as opposed to a second chance, but it's erotica.
Right, exactly. As a matter of fact, it's funny you brought that up. I did a consulting with a second chance romance writer, and I was actually going to give this as the full example of a phrase that truly works. Okay. And that'll really help in understanding all this coming together. Don't worry, it's not the one that she ended up using. So I'm not stealing or giving away information like that. But here's the thing. All right. So there's that. Now, let's go through the list, and then we'll get to this case study that proves it all.
Sorry. Yes.
So then the next thing is catalysts, or what sets off the story. And what I mean by that is, say, for example, you're doing a dystopian, right? A post-apocalyptic dystopian. Okay, great. What caused the dystopian? Was it or what caused the post-apocalypse or the apocalypse itself? Was it, climate change? Was it zombies? Was it disease? Was it dragons? Was it, what caused the world to go to crap? Now, the story itself might not need that. It may be about a dad and his daughter wandering around in the wasteland looking for food and just trying to survive. But to a post-apocalyptic reader, the point that caused the post-apocalypse, or the apocalypse, that's important. That's a key element. Zombie books are way better than dragon books to some, and vice versa to others. Reign of Fire always comes to mind when I think of the dragon ones. Underrated movie, great movie. But again, you could go to, like, if you're talking about a second chance romance, right? Well, what happened? Was it the original husband died at war? Is he just a cheating son of a gun? Did he disappear? Is it kind of a murder mystery? Like, what caused her to be a divorced or widowed, or how do you? So what started it? And sometimes that's important. Because if the guy died in war, that's one different story than he's a cheating son of a gun, right? It changes the narrative and what happens. And so sometimes you'll find that quantifier come back into the original search, where the person's like, no, I don't want that kind. Like, what's the word? Divorce, cheater. Like, then they'll add those words in there, and it's like, oh, okay, now I'm getting more of the story I want, more of the kind that I want. So that's another part. So anyways, those four are really some of the more key ones. We have a couple of ones that you can use as well. Like I said, if you go to that, if you just type in fiction keywords into Google, this article will show up. But what I love most is that after I created this article, Amazon actually promoted that article, and even sent people to it. And then they also changed their FAQ to reflect my list.
Wow.
They didn't tell me they did that, but and I actually found the archive.org of before and after, and they literally changed it to be exactly what I said.
Oh my God.
That's a huge kudos to you, isn't it?
And that's their how to choose your keywords. And they said, if you're in fiction, use these 4 different. And I was like,
oh my God.
well,
I don't know.
at least
I feel like you could maybe go
credit.
to them and ask for a little bit of credit or something.
Kickback for that.
Yeah.
So obviously they approved of that on how to describe a fiction, you know, and I mean,
so
we put it through Rocket and we see that these things are absolutely the phrases that people use. And by the way, when you look at your own search bar on how you search for books, you'll notice that you're not using proper grammar. You're not, you know, using sentence structure. You're putting something in there and then you're adding a word or phrase. And so this comes to the culmination of the example. The phrase that was really working, that was amazing, was Victorian second chance romance with baby.
Oh.
Because it was a Victorian style second chance romance. But now the with baby is hilarious because, I mean, what is it? Second chance? That sounds terrible. But you imagine the person put in Victorian second chance. And what do you see? Whole bunch of like steamy romance, like, you know, just Victorian scantily clad with, you know, man without a shirt. And you're like, no, I want a wholesome one. I got it. She's with child. So she's a single mother. Single mother didn't come, but with baby came to the mind of the shopper. Oh, wow. And so a lot of people type in the with baby. Like it's not single mother because they already got past that. So they add it to the end of their keyword string. And now you can actually tell the entire story just by those, what is it, 4 or 5 words? Victorian 3, 4, second chance 5, 6, romance 6. With baby. Yeah. We all know that because it's Victorian era, somehow she's without husband, which is shameful. Oh my goodness. Even if it's not her fault, which doesn't matter if it is or isn't.
Yeah. Not in Victorian times. Yeah.
Not in Victorian times. Like, oh my goodness, that is, and you know, I want to say the actual word for a fatherless child, but you know, we want to keep it, you know, without making a curse word, because apparently it's a curse word, but the definition of the word is a fatherless child.
Yes.
Now she has to find love again, but more importantly, she has to find the kind of love of someone who would take on someone else's child in a society that looks down on this already. She is a social pariah. Again, that's also a really good word too. Social pariah is great, especially when you're talking about single mothers or divorces. I don't know why. I don't even know how to spell pariah very well. I have to look it up every time. But it is. And so now, just that phrase tells you the entire story. I don't read second chance romance, but I could tell you the entire story. You can already feel the conflicts, the different levels of conflicts that exist. And that is a powerful phrase for writers. And it includes a time period and setting. It does include the genre. It doesn't go deeper, but with child is kind of a subgenre, right? It's really second chance, or what is it? Single mother, second chance romance, wholesome Christian, all with just saying second chance romance with child.
Yeah, and also the conflict, the catalyst is like, you know, Victorian with child. Immediately, you know what the conflict is. Yeah.
Yeah. Or, you know, different phrases, which sometimes you find that a different phrase works. Sometimes you don't, which is why I love, you know, you create that sheet, you have these different categories and you write as many of your ideas as you can come up with. Then you put them into Publisher Rocket, and Publisher Rocket will take what you have and try to provide even more. Then you see which ones actually work, which ones actually have shoppers typing it in, which ones actually make sales, which ones are or aren't too competitive. And then you'll start to build a list and you can mix and match them. You'll grab like one phrase from this list, one phrase from that list. And what you're doing is you're proving concept. You will then have keywords that you know people are really typing in, that people are buying, that really fit and describe your book. And when you have those things, that's when your keywords are truly benefiting your book. When you're just guessing and throwing up words and coming up with it, like, let's face it, I'm pretty sure everybody listening to this podcast did not think with child, or I'm sorry, with baby was going to be a phrase, but let me tell you, it is, and it's a good one. And then
what's
it makes sense when
interesting,
you finally hear it.
Yeah. What's interesting though is, how do you figure out, like, to me, I'm kind of like, how on earth would you ever go, I know I'm going to put with baby into Publisher Rocket? Like, what was it, just a trial and error thing?
Well, actually, no, Publisher Rocket generated that for us.
Oh, really?
We typed in second chance romance, and then Publisher Rocket went through and found, well, when people type that in, there were people that actually add with baby. And it's like, what? And then we're like sitting there and thinking about it. I was like, Oh, I know what they were doing. I get it.
Yeah.
Misspellings is also another one too. Oh, good Lord. There's a lot of misspelled words,
Yeah.
which if you think about it as shoppers, there's no spell correct. And we don't
No.
stop and correct our spelling. We just hit enter
Yeah.
and be like, figure
Yeah.
it out, Amazon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of that.
Oh, that's hilarious. And so for every one of those 7 keywords, you want to have or try to have those 4 areas. Is that what you're kind of saying? You want to find 4 phrases rather than single words?
So what I like to do, and again, this if you make sure to check out that article, the 7 Kindle keywords, because not only do I explain what really happens to the words that are inside of it, I also break down and give my final recommendation, which is if you find a phrase, a full phrase that absolutely is perfect, like great, like say you are writing a second chance romance with baby. Okay, maybe it's not Victorian, maybe yours is medieval, and you tested on Rocket and found, nope, nobody types in medieval second chance romance with baby as a full phrase. Maybe they type in medieval, but not all of it together. You'll run into that sometimes. In this case, I would put second chance romance with baby as its own block. I might have more characters, but it is so good. I don't want to crowd it with anything else. I want it to be its own box. We found that you have better rankings when you do that. However, though, I would do that for maybe 3 or 4 of the boxes. But then on the last 3 boxes or 4 boxes, I will take groupings of all these words that I came up with that I really like, and I'll throw them all into the box to the max of 50 characters. Okay. And the reason for that is I will get indexed for more things that pertain to my book. I give Amazon more understanding of what my book really is about, but I'm making it clear I want to rank as good as I can for that particular phrase and that particular phrase and that particular phrase. And then for the rest of it, just here's a good understanding. We found that when you do it that way with your 7 Kindle keyword boxes, you will get the most optimized, beneficial, or the biggest benefit of your keywords by far. Okay. You can do just one, you can just, or you could do it however, but we found that was the best of both worlds.
Awesome.
That's a great tip. Yeah.
And what about if you've got your backlist and you suddenly realize that all of your keywords are terrible based on listening to this? Is it harder to go back and change them and kind of get back into the Amazon's algorithms, or will it just take effect and it'll all be happy and roses?
We've got another article right there on the tutorial too that's on how to change your keywords. Okay. And the cool thing about it is that Amazon is phenomenal about it. You can go right in there, you can change your keywords, and Amazon will, within 24 hours, it will take effect. And as a matter of fact, we see a lot of people who will change their keywords and they'll see a bump in sales immediately. And then sometimes it will go back to what it was, but like some people are like, hey, I just made more money just by changing some words. That's cool. And that's because when you change it, Amazon's like, oh, something happened. Shock. I'm going to come back and look at this. And so they give it a little bit of love to see how well it does. One big thing about keywords is that Amazon's all about making more money. If your book does really well for this keyword phrase, Amazon wants you to stay there. But when they put you there and you're not doing as good as a different book was when it was there, you're going to drop down to where you should be. So that's why people will see like a nice bump. And then, if they weren't doing as well as the books that were there before their bump, then they'll drop back down to where they were. Okay. One thing that I recommend people do if they are changing their keywords is do not change all your keywords at once.
Oh, okay.
Interesting.
The reason for this is that there may be one phrase, one of your boxes that is actually bringing in most of your money. It could be that box. And it's interesting. There's an article that I'll be coming out with soon that talks about this, but it's called the popularity effect. And that's what I'm titling it in a way. And in the popularity effect, what ultimately happens is that if your keyword is doing really well, your book is doing really well, then Amazon decides to show you for even more words than you originally asked for that they think are connected to this one from their market research and their history of sales and all their data. And if you're doing really good on those, then they'll show you for even more until you finally hit that point where, okay, yeah, no, it's too broad now for this one. It's not doing as good. Let's bring it back down to here. That's why you'll see a lot of books that really stick in Amazon for a while because they've done a great job. Well, you may have one of your keyword phrases is actually helping you show for something else that's really making your sales. And if you go and change all of them, you may not know, like you may have killed your sales and you won't know which one it was. Now, the good thing is that if you do say 2 at a time and you see your sales go up, then sweet. Just know that the 2 you changed did you good. So then go and change another 2. And if all of a sudden you change the other 2 and, oh no, my sales dropped, then okay, change it back to what it was and you should be fine. But what you'll find is if you keep doing this, you'll find that optimal balance. You'll find here it is. That's the grouping that's doing the most. And if you do this in a systematic kind of scientific approach, you'll really be able to feel strong about that. I think this is a very important step for authors who do a series. You should know what the most optimal keywords are. And when you have, say, for example, you're doing your series, in book 1, you found that these phrases seem to be the most powerful of the 3 phases because you saw it had the greatest effect when you changed them. I would take those same 3 phrases and use them for book 2 and book 3 and book 4, and then come up with new phrases for the other 4 boxes for each of the books.
That makes a lot of
the
sense.
best tactic forward.
Yeah, I was going to say that's literally what I was going to ask you, whether you had the same ones and not. So yeah, that's cool. And I've heard of authors changing keywords just regularly, like kind of every, once a quarter, changing them just to see or to try new keywords.
Keep it fresh. Yep.
Yeah,
that
so
is.
You would do that?
There are definitely a lot of, especially fiction authors, that do that. That helps kind of revive, keep things a bit fresh. Not everybody wants to. Some people like they hit it really well. But there are definitely authors that do that tactic. I personally, for fiction, would do it to an extent until you finally really fit that, you hit that nice, clean, straight line, as I call it, where without your marketing efforts that you're seeing this consistent sale that you're good with, then, don't touch it. Just let it be. Let Amazon you enjoy that pay coming in.
Yeah.
Oh, that's hilarious. Okay. And I had another question and I can't remember. Oh no, don't you hate it when that happens? So keywords in titles was the other thing. So you're really clear about when we're doing nonfiction that you use these keywords that you discover in the title. We can't really do that as easily in fiction, although you do see that when people have the subtitle as, urban fantasy with dragons or whatever. What's your take on that kind of stuff? How do we?
I think so. Keywords in the so definitely not in the title unless it's really a perfect fit. Okay, go for it. Sure. When it comes to fiction, all right. When it comes to nonfiction, 100%, you absolutely should put keywords in your subtitle, not for just stuffing, but when we were talking about, that one example of lost your job, make money online as a single mother. If you're really talking to an existing market, shouldn't it be in the title and subtitle? Like that truly fits, right? Yeah, and remember, these are the words that your target market uses to describe what they're looking for. There's no better marketing strategy than to use your own customers' words in describing the pain they have. Like, you see those commercials online. It's like, do you have sharp pain in the back, in the lower part of your back? Do you think they just made that up? No, their research came back and said sharp pain in the lower back is exactly how our customers describe their pain. So that's what we should say to catch their attention. Same thing with books. With regards to nonfiction or to fiction, I think it's more important than fiction authors think. And it's not for keyword purposes. It's about setting the expectation of the customer. There's a strategy that I call the symbiotic relationship between the cover, title, and subtitle. I type in a keyword phrase into Amazon and I'm looking at book covers, and I'm trying to see which book covers fit something that interests me. Okay. If I type in a sci-fi military term, I better see some giant starships. I'm looking for something that looks good. Okay.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that's my kind of sci-fi military. And it may not be. Maybe I'm looking for a little bit of romance. Maybe I'm looking for, intergalactic battles or Earth invasion, But what's going to happen is that I'm going to look at those covers, and then I'm going to look at the title, and then I'm going to look at the subtitle to try to figure out if this really is worth me clicking. Now that sounds stupid, but we're in the internet age. We may click, but we click back really quickly. Or we just are quick to scroll and do another search, What I mean by this symbiotic relationship is you do not want to confuse the shopper into not knowing what this book really is about. There's a great book, and I wish we could bring up an example as a picture, but it's called Hitch, Hitch. Okay. And Hitch shows the cover it shows what appears to be a guy on a horse with a cowboy hat, but it's very dark. It's nighttime and it's kind of shadowy, so you can't see the details of the sky. And in the sky is fireworks or ramparts, I don't know, but things blowing up in the air. Now, I ask you, do you know what this book is about? That's all you got. That's all you have to go off of is a shadowy figure on a horse with a hat and fireworks or ramparts.
Western is kind of what I would come up because of the horse in the
Yep.
Yeah.
And so you're gonna guess Western as in like 1800s time period or modern rancher or what?
Well,
you don't know.
Fireworks. I don't know. That doesn't seem right.
Or
does
it's
it?
ramparts. Or it's ramparts.
Oh, ramparts.
Right?
So it's oh god. So maybe it's like military somehow.
Maybe it's time travel or something.
When I saw it, I thought it was of a cowboy who was watching fireworks, and maybe because it's fireworks, which wasn't very prevalent in Western culture, you know, for cowboys and stuff like that. So I thought maybe it's modern ranchers sitting and watching fireworks. Now, even if I'm right, I can't tell you what that book is about. I don't know if it's if it's a Western, like a real Western, or if it's, you know, a long lost love, you know, a cowboy out on the ranch who doesn't have someone to love, lonely cowboy. I don't know. I can't tell. I'm not going to click on that because I would have to click to figure it out. And but we're scrollers. We're not curious. We're scrollers. We'll just keep scrolling by.
If it doesn't hit exactly what you want.
Right. And it turns out it's actually a Civil War soldier, like, of course, you know, cavalrymen or something like that. And it turns out that author is a big Civil War cowboy author. But me, the shopper, who's never read him or seen him or her, I don't remember who, I would not know that from looking. So I'm not going to click on it. So what I mean by this is that when you have a cover where you can't look at it and immediately know what kind of genre it is or what it fits or what the age demographic is, and you have a title, which the title should be creative and fun, it should not be explaining everything, then it is important for an author to add some kind of quantifying subtitle, something that helps me to know that this is a cowboy Western romance. Now I know that it fits my search criteria, that's there. Another example of this is Lit RPG. I love Lit RPG books, and Lit RPG books is literature role-playing books, okay? Or role-playing game books. There are different styles of Lit RPG, though. There's Game Lit, which is called game literature. There's Wuxia. There is, and it's one of those subcategories that's sort of new and growing like crazy and is trying to discover itself and figure out. Cultivation is a huge word for those as well. I love Lit RPG, Game Lit, cultivation books. They are my favorite. And I now know those words, so I use them to shop. Here's the thing, though. You can't create a cover that helps to exemplify what Game Lit, Lit RPG, or all. You could create a fantasy cover, but I'm not going to know that that's Game Lit, Lit RPG cultivation. And to explain what it is usually Game Lit cultivation is you're stuck in a video game where you have to cultivate points to rise up and level. Okay. Usually it's like,
I was imagining you have to cultivate plants.
No, yep, you have to fight mods, which is, you know, the computer monsters or whatever. And then when you kill them, you get points. And when you get a certain number of points, you can level up and then you become more powerful. And so this is a straight up, you can't design that into a cover. You can't make a cover where you see the guy swing and then there's points floating out. Like it just loses its value. So instead you create an amazing epic fantasy cover. And then to let me know that this is the kind, because I typed in Lit RPG Game Lit cultivation in the search bar. You tell me that it's an epic Game Lit adventure or a Lit RPG cultivation. You just put those words in there to help me as the customer know that this is the right kind of
as a subtitle.
Yep, exactly. And that doesn't ruin it. There's a way to make it so, you know, don't stuff keywords. Don't put Lit RPG cultivation, epic adventure, war, fantasy, dungeon. I mean, those are a lot of words that I would definitely use in my keywords. Absolutely. Dungeon's a big one. Dungeon is almost becoming its own sub category in that category. Sub at this point, right? But I can at least design dungeon in the cover, but I can't design cultivation. I can't design. So help the shopper see that and make it a nice fitting phrase, you know, epic lit RPG, you know, or adventure, right? Game lit cultivation adventure.
Yeah. Okay.
That's a stylish way, not a cheap cram the keywords in their way, but a stylish way to reinforce to the shopper like me that that's my kind of book. So I would say authors should really think about that, because if you write a hitch, it may be a great book, but I'm not going to click it. And that author has probably lost a lot of money because it's too ambiguous, especially to someone who's new to him or her.
Because the cover is a piece of part of your sales, like your marketing. And because you often hear, you often hear authors talking about, oh, I love my cover, it represents the book, but they're not thinking about it in those terms. They're not thinking about how it's going to be to the reader who's coming to look at it and what they're looking for.
When I give advice to covers, it's usually like nails on a chalkboard to authors, but you have to hear me out on this. It's almost a law for publishing companies. They've been doing this for years and they do it the same way. There's no such thing. There should not be such thing as creativity in a cover. You're not reinventing the wheel and you never should. The reason for that, and it sounds like I'm a jerk face for saying this, and authors who are artists hate this, but I'm telling you, it's about, I as a shopper have been conditioned to see certain covers and know that that's my kind of book, because that's what they all look like. They all, like I said in the beginning, epic sci-fi military, like 95% of the time has a giant spaceship. Even if the entire book takes place on planet Earth, it's got a giant spaceship. Why? To catch me, to click and read the book description and make the decision to buy. But if you put something on there that's a little bit ambiguous or doesn't fit the mold of what I think when I'm thinking of epic sci-fi, I'm not going to do it. When I was working with Orson Scott Card, he had told me this great story that really embodies this. And when he wrote the book Ender's Game, which is a Hugo and a Nebula Award winner, it's now a movie, but way back in the day, way back in the day, he argued with the publisher, because what the picture is of the cover is a giant spaceship and this little tiny spaceship exiting and then flying with what looks like almost like runway lights in space, right? That's what the original cover was. And he looked at it and he hated it. He was like, this is terrible. I don't have that scene in my book. This is an Ender. This is something else. And the publishing company is like, Scott, look. It never has to be the scene of your book. And it will never be the scene of your book until this is a famous book. All it needs to do is remind / make the shopper believe that this is a sci-fi book. That's all we're going for. And it fits the mold of all the other successful sci-fi books. That's it. I started laughing. I'm like, Scott, that's exactly how I found your book. Way back when I was like in 4th or 5th grade, I got in super trouble with the librarian. And she said, I'll report you to the principal, or you go back there and you find a book and you read it in 1 week and you come back to me and you give me a book report. Then we'll pretend nothing happened. I said, yes, ma'am. Went right back there, searching through the spines, saw a little spaceship, pulled out. I was like, oh, that's a big spaceship and a little spaceship. I like Star Wars. Took that one and read it, and Lord behold, it was my favorite book. Especially growing up as a kid, is probably the reason why I became a sci-fi fan. And then to be able to tell them that story is like, yeah, I've heard that my entire writer life. They were right. I just don't question that anymore. So don't try to reinvent the wheel. Instead, I would say study all the other book covers of the more popular books in your genre, and don't try to recreate that wheel. There's a reason why they're using that, not because it's work, but because that's what the customer's been preconditioned for.
That's really great. Great advice. We said that we would talk about categories, but we're kind of running really close to the end of our time. So in 2 minutes, could you describe categories and how we as authors can or should be using them?
There's an incredible point to this. When you go to publish your book on Amazon for the first time, Amazon will ask you to select categories. You'll click this box and it pops up, and then you can do this, like, you can basically choose the categories they show you. One of the biggest things that authors don't understand about that, though, those aren't categories. They're called BISACs. BISACs are like an international standard categorization code. It's for supply chain logistics. What that means is that a long time ago, a bunch of companies basically said, darn it, when we publish a book, I got no idea like the categorization code, because this mom and pop shop has 28 book categories. Amazon has thousands, Barnes and Noble has thousands. And can't there just be a standard code so that I can attach this book to it? And then you guys figure out which one that fits in. That's what a BISAC is. So you select the BISAC when you go to publish your book. And then Amazon takes that BISAC and says, okay, we think it fits this Amazon category over here. Sometimes the category, and there have been a couple where the category they put you in is not the category you think you're in. So one big thing for authors is that box is not categories. Those are BISACs. Now, when you go to publish your book, there's actually a special form that you can fill out to convince Amazon to either change categories and add categories beyond the 3 that you selected for BISACs. You can go up to 10 plus categories just by asking them. That's it. And on Publisher Rocket's tutorial page, to the right of the category tutorial video, you'll see an article that says how to change, or actually it's a video on how to change and add categories. Follow that step by step. You can get added to the categories you want. Now, to go to Amazon's point, though, Amazon actually has 14,000 Amazon categories. 14,000.
Yeah.
The cool thing is Publisher Rocket has a list of all 14,000 where you can find them all just like that. And you can use searches, you can put in words, you can find every book that has the word sci-fi or spaceship, it'll be crazy that you'll find like epic sci-fi military spaceship invasion. You'll find that exact category in both sci-fi and fantasy, in literary fiction, in young adult, and there's a lot of opportunities in there, and nobody ever thinks that. Everybody just goes to sci-fi and military. So you can find these categories very easy with Rocket. And even more important is that Rocket will actually tell you how many books that day you would need to sell in order to be the #1 book for that category. So you can use it to quickly find every possible opportunity that works for you, put it in, get Amazon to add it, and now you have by far the best opportunity to hit #1 bestseller status.
Awesome.
Perfect.
There's probably a little more than 2 minutes.
No, that was great, actually. I think that can condense that very well.
Thank you so much. So yes, we are, unfortunately, I could keep talking for another hour or two, but at the end of today's podcast. But thank you so much for coming on the show and talking about that. Yeah, it's always a pleasure. So
well, thanks for having me.
That's no worries. Now, where is the best place for people to go if they want to learn more, obviously?
Sure. If you go to kindlepreneur.com, I've got a contact page. You can always hit me up there.
Yeah. Or go and look at all the amazing articles in the blog, and go search out that website. It's full of gold.
And all the little free courses that Dave offers are just brilliant. Whether you're setting up your email or stuff like that.
Do you still have the one on Amazon? Amazon ads? I remember doing that a while ago. I don't know if it's
if anybody wants to take my free Amazon ads course, you can just go to amscourse.com and boom, sign up and enjoy.
Done that one as well. Awesome.
Brilliant. Okay.
And so Cheryl, where can we be found?
We can be found at spagirlspodcast.com, and we would love to hear from you on our Facebook page, and also if you'd like to subscribe to us on YouTube and visit us anywhere on Twitter or Facebook. Love to talk to you, leave a comment. Be great to hear from you. And awesome. We look forward to catching up with everyone next week.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for listening to another episode of the Spa Girls podcast. That is it for now. Thank you.
Keep well. Bye.